The year is 1876. Two men both claim the presidency. Troops gather in Washington, and the United States stands on the edge of another civil war. The United States has had several fiercely contested elections, but only a handful pushed the country as close to a constitutional crisis as the election of 1876. In that election, Republican Rutherford B. Hayes was ultimately sworn in as president, even though Democrat Samuel J. Tilden had won the popular vote and appeared, at first, to have secured victory in the Electoral College as well. To understand why tensions ran so high, you have to look at the political climate of the time. The election took place just 11 years after the end of the Civil War in 1865. The country was still deeply divided, and Reconstruction, the federal effort to reintegrate the former Confederate states and protect the rights of newly freed black citizens, remained controversial and unstable. During Reconstruction, the South was placed under federal military supervision, and states had to ratify the 14th Amendment to be readmitted to the Union. In theory, this guaranteed equal rights and citizenship to all people born in the United States. In practice, however, many southern states quickly passed laws and used intimidation, violence, and legal loopholes like literacy tests and property requirements to suppress black voting and limit civil rights. Technically race-neutral, these policies were anything but in effect. By 1876, fatigue with Reconstruction was widespread. President Ulysses S. Grant's administration had been damaged by corruption scandals, and many Americans wanted stability and reconciliation. The Republicans nominated Hayes, a moderate governor from Ohio, while the Democrats nominated Tilden, the reform-minded governor of New York, who was popular in the South and among voters tired of Republican rule. Election night was chaotic. Communication was slow, and early returns suggested that Tilden had won both the popular vote and enough electoral votes to become president. He appeared to have 184 electoral votes, just one shy of the 185 needed to win, with disputed results in Florida, Louisiana, and South Carolina. Those three states became the center of the crisis. Voting in the 19th century lacked standard ballots or consistent procedures. In parts of the South, pre-printed party ballots were used, and accusations of fraud, voter intimidation, and manipulation were rampant. Violence against black Republican voters was especially widespread, and in some areas turnout numbers were suspiciously high or contested. Both parties accused the other of cheating. Republican-controlled election boards in the disputed states began discarding ballots they considered fraudulent, many of which favored Democrats, and eventually certified their states for Hayes. If those results stood, Hayes would win the presidency by a single electoral vote. Democrats were outraged. Tilden supporters began calling Hayes Rutherford Hayes, claiming the election had been stolen. Meanwhile, a new controversy emerged in Oregon, where a Democratic governor attempted to replace a Republican elector with a Democrat in order to shift a vote to Tilden, even though the state had voted for Hayes. As the political deadlock deepened, fears of violence grew. President Grant quietly ordered federal troops to Washington, D.C. Hayes's inauguration was even privately conducted in advance as a precaution. Some Democratic governors discussed mobilizing state militias, and rumors circulated that rival inaugurations might take place, one for Hayes in Washington and another for Tilden in New York. For a nation that had only recently survived civil war, the possibility of armed conflict over the presidency felt alarmingly real. To resolve the crisis, Congress created a special electoral commission in early 1877. It consisted of 15 members, 5 from the House, 5 from the Senate, and 5 from the Supreme Court, designed to be evenly split between Democrats and Republicans, with one neutral tiebreaker. That tiebreaker was expected to be Justice David Davis, widely respected for his independence. However, he was unexpectedly elected to the Senate by Democrats and withdrew from the commission to avoid any appearance of bias. His replacement was Justice Bradley, a Republican-leaning justice, shifting the balance of the commission. In a series of 8-7 partisan votes, the commission awarded all the disputed electoral votes to Hayes, giving him a final total of 185 to Tilden's 184. Technically, Congress could still reject the commission's decision if both houses agreed, but the Republican-controlled Senate supported it, while only the Democratic House objected. The decision stood. Despite widespread anger, Tilden ultimately conceded, not because he accepted the result as legitimate, but because many Democrats were unwilling to risk national chaos or renewed war. Tilden himself was also notably passive during the crisis, failing to aggressively organize resistance or fund political efforts to challenge the outcome. There is a popular belief that a secret compromise of 1877 gave Hayes the presidency in exchange for ending Reconstruction. While Hayes did withdraw federal troops from the South, historians have found no definitive evidence of a formal written deal. More likely, Hayes's moderate disparate views and the political exhaustion of Reconstruction simply aligned with broader national sentiment. So how close was the United States to another civil war? Closer than many Americans realized at the time, but still not truly on the brink. The memory of the Civil War's devastation was still fresh, and most political leaders on both sides ultimately chose constitutional process over confrontation. Fear, anger, and accusations ran high, but the culture of democratic continuity held. In the end, the crisis exposed major flaws in the electoral system and led directly to reforms clarifying how disputed elections would be handled. Cooler heads prevailed, and the nation avoided violence, not because tensions were low, but because the cost of conflict was still far too horrifying to contemplate. Subscribe for more untold history stories.